The following is a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. For more information, please visit our website at dallasgenealogy.org. Which leads us to what you're all here for, I know, which is Gus Hinojosa. So I would like to introduce Gus. He's a 13th generation Tejano who was raised in San Antonio. Is a descendant of noted Spanish and Mexican explorers and settlers who influenced history in the United States and in Mexico. His ancestors include territorial governors and leading settlers in South Texas and New Mexico. His family lines also descend from El Cid. I hope he'll explain to me who that was. William the Conqueror and Charlemagne. He's a past president of the Alhambra de Dallas, which is the Hispanic Organization for Genealogy and Research, and is currently their vice president. He also serves as the president of the Mexican American Museum of Texas and is our at-large director for the Dallas Genealogical Society. So we're very proud to have him on our board. Very happy. He's been a great voice already just in 2 meetings, but even happier to have him here and hear what he's got to say about my journey back to Spain via my Sephardic roots. So I give you Gus Hinojosa.
Well, I think when they offered the at-large position, they didn't realize what a big mouth I have. So anyway, thank you very much for being here and for welcoming me to give this talk. On behalf of Alhambra de Dallas, I'd also like to thank this group and this organization for being part of what gave birth to Alhambra de Dallas 25 years ago. So we celebrated our 25th anniversary this past summer, and I believe it started with DGS, and we appreciate that. And at that time, it was insightful, and we appreciate that you guys helped with that. My talk today is about my journey back to Spain via my Sephardic Jews. This morning, I woke up to CNN, and unfortunately, there was an attack in Israel. So with that being in mind, and in particular specific to my talk today, I'd like a few seconds of silence in honor of Israel. Thank you for your consideration. Did everyone get the handouts? I don't know if everyone received them via email or, okay, online. Anyway, I had 2 different handouts. One is my actual ancestry lineage back to my ancestor, Sephardic ancestor. And the second one was a list of the hoops that I had to jump through to get my citizenship. So with that being said, my name's Gustavo N. Hinojosa. Gus for short, since in the 1960s, my lovely grade school Irish nuns could not pronounce Gustavo. So I went by Gus. But now, fast forward, I've reclaimed my baptismal name, and I go by both Gustavo and Gus. This picture is of my parents, and just like all of us, we are the results of our parents. My story begins in the Rio Grande Valley in a small town called San Benito, Texas. I was born on September 6, 1958, the second son of Raul Hinojosa, an aspiring young attorney, and Sarita Leal, a caring wife and mother. 2 months later, on November 2nd, I was baptized at St. Benedict's Catholic Church in San Benito, Texas. Both my parents had been baptized at the same church. Their parents and my grandparents and ancestors had been baptized in Brownsville, Matamoros, Reynosa, and Mier. They were both descended from founding families of Escandon's 18th century Spanish colonies along the Rio Grande Valley, with lands on both sides of the river, of what is now South Texas. As the population was sparse, families intermarried among the colonies, and thus my parents were distant cousins, with shared 6th great-grandparents, Captain Diego Hinojosa and Josefa de la Garza. For generations, the family was Catholic, very Roman Catholic, as far as we knew. For my genealogical research, which began in the late 1980s, when microfilm and microfiche were the norm, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with that, I had traced our family lines from Escandon's colonies back to the founding families of Monterey and Saltillo. Colonists with Oñate's expedition to New Mexico, officers with Coronado's expedition in what is now the United States, and conquistadores who came with Cortés in 1519. During my research, I came across references which alluded to the Jewish roots of families which colonized North New Spain, which is now Mexico, i.e. Saltillo, and especially Monterrey. It was said that these colonists were crypto-Jews, which is a term for those who overtly are Christian, but covertly practice Judaism, who had moved northward to escape the Inquisition. While growing up in San Antonio in the 1960s and 70s, I had heard my parents refer to people from Monterrey as muy codos. Literally, codo means elbow, and the term was expressed by tapping one's elbow. That was the sign. The term, the term was not necessarily a compliment, but rather, I believe, an insult, as it referred to the assumption that Jews were tight-fisted and cheap. This assumption has ancient roots, as Catholics were not allowed to charge interest per dogma on loans, and thus Jews became the monetary handlers. This task, which was economically beneficial to both the church and to monarchs, allowed Jews to progress socially and politically. However, it also created an environment of convenient tolerance, but never true acceptance. It is this fragile economic, social, and political relationship, which varied over the course of time in Europe, and especially in Spain, that ultimately gave way to the Alhambra Decree, also known as the Edict of Expulsion. Ferdinand and Isabella. This is to kind of put it into historical context of what was happening at that time. The Alhambra Decree was an edict issued on March 31st, 1492, by the Catholic monarchs of Spain, Isabella I of Castile, and Ferdinand II of Aragon. It was their marriage that really unified Spain and created the concept of the country of Spain. The edict ordered the expulsion of practicing Jews from Castile, Aragon, and its territories by July 31st, 1492. This allowed only 4 months to either convert to Catholicism or keep the Jewish faith and leave the country. The primary purpose of the edict was to eliminate the influence of practicing Jews on Spain's large, formerly Jewish population, also known as conversos, converts, or new Christians. Over half of Spain's Jews had converted to Catholicism as a result of the religious persecution and riots of 1391. Another large portion of the Jewish population, approximately 50,000, had converted by 1415. Persecution and pressure continued, so much so that many more Jews converted. Those who did not, approximately 40,000 to 100,000, were expelled in 1492. Coincidentally, Ferdinand and Isabella's shared ancestor, King Henry II of Castile and Leon, the illegitimate cadet founder of the House of Trastámara, had persecuted Jews during his reign, which ran from 1361 to 1379. So the process had been put in motion by previous generations. The Catholic monarchs made a formal application to Rome to set up the Inquisition in 1478. This Inquisition was designed to find and punish conversos, converts, who were practicing Judaism in secret. These people were known as crypto-Jews. The Alhambra Decree. With the signing of the Treaty of Granada on November 25th, 1491, Ferdinand and Isabella finally conquered the Islamic Emirate of Granada in southern Spain, completing the Catholic Reconquista or reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula from Islamic forces. The religious freedom of the Muslims in southern Spain was protected by the treaty. However, the Jewish population emerged even more hated by the old Christians, the clergy, and the general populace. Less than 3 months after the surrender of Granada, Ferdinand and Isabella issued the Alhambra Decree, putting into motion the expulsion of Jews from Spain, which was the largest of its kind and officially the longest lasting in Western European history. In 1968, the Alhambra Decree was formally revoked by the Second Vatican Council. So it's quite a bit of time. Fast forward. In 1924, the regime of Primo de Rivera granted the possibility of Spanish citizenship to part of the Sephardic Jewish diaspora. During the Franco regime, 1939 to 1975, some progress had been reversed. In 1992, the 500th anniversary of the decree, King Juan Carlos prayed alongside Israeli President Chaim Herzog and other members of the Jewish community in the Beth Yaakov synagogue. Spanish policy varied concerning requirements for Spanish citizenship of Sephardic Jews and their descendants prior to the parliament's passing of the Sephardic Ancestry Law on June 11, 2015. The law went into effect October 1st, 2015. As a member of Hogar de Dallas, we had heard about this new law that had gone into effect for Spanish citizenship. We discussed this option, but I know of only one member who decided to pursue these options. He poured himself into the process and learned that the best ancestor to connect to was Marcos Alonso de la Garza y Alcón, since there was documentation by genealogists confirming him as a known converso. Marco Alonso was born in Lepe, a small town south in southern Spain, due west of Sevilla and just north of the Gulf of Cadiz. This town was known to be occupied by conversos and their descendants. Marcos Alonso arrived in New Spain, Mexico City, at the end of the 16th century. By 1585, he had married Juana de Tremino y Quintanilla. Together, they had 11 children, some of whom used their father's name, de la Garza, and the others using their mother's name, Tremino or Trevino. Juana's family had arrived in New Spain in the 1530s and was an established, wealthy family. It is not uncommon in the Hispanic culture to use either the father's name or the mother's surname. One's complete surname includes both the paternal and the maternal surnames. This designates legitimacy. Oftentimes, a distant family name can be used to honor an illustrious ancestor. In today's northern Spain and southern Texas, if you have either of these surnames, de la Garza or Trevino, you probably are descended from this one couple. I am descended from their son, Pedro I de la Garza, the elder. If you have my ancestry, you can follow the line, and that ancestor is the one that goes back to Marcos. Our Hogar member followed the extensive process and received his citizenship within the deadline of October 1st. I had considered applying for it, but it was just a fleeting thought until a particular fateful night. Keep hitting that. On September 19th, 2018, I attended a fundraiser where I met a friendly-faced petite woman standing at a cocktail table. We started talking, and she mentioned that she was from South Texas. I asked her name and she responded, Rebecca Garza. I said, if you're from the Valley and named Garza, we're probably related somewhere along the way. We laughed and said, most South Texas Mexican Americans are related because there were only so many families to intermarry with during colonial times. She said she was applying for Spanish citizenship through the 2015 law for descendants of Sephardic Jews and listed the steps she had done to date. I told her of my interest in genealogy and that I would help her if she needed it. She encouraged me to join her. Luckily, by this time, the Spanish government had extended the application process to October 1st, 2019. Rebecca had engaged a lawyer in Barcelona, and suggested that I use them as well. They were familiar with the process and successfully represented several applicants. The pact was made that evening. I decided to climb the mountain with my newly founded cousin, Rebecca. Little did we know what hoops we would have to jump through to get what we wanted to. Number 5. So first, I had to engage the lawyer. So Rebecca had shared that information with me, and I emailed Barcel's International Lawyers Group in Barcelona. My assigned lawyer was Naomi, who was kind and very helpful. We discussed the situation, and I wired her the agreed amount in due time. Next, she sent me the list of requirements, which you see on the screen, to make the application. Please refer to that. And it's quite the list, and I'm going to go through the 3 sections. I'm not going to go through each line, but some of the more important lines. So these were the hoops that we needed to jump through. And the particular reason the Spanish government extended the deadline from October 1st, 2018 to October 1st, 2019, specifically because of this list. It was very hard for most people to check all the requirements. The general documents, obtaining the genealogical information was not a huge task for me, since my research included documents from my parents, grandparents, and generations back. The initial difficulty was actually scheduling the exams. The first one, DELE, Diplomas de Español como Lengua Extranjera, which translates to Diplomas of Spanish as a Foreign Language. Scheduling was difficult because it was only given by the Cervantes Institute, which is headquartered in Madrid, given only on certain dates, in certain months, in certain cities, internationally. In addition, it had to be completed by a certain date. I ended up getting a reservation in, of all places, Austin. The test included grammar, original composition, and conversational prowess. My funny story is that I showed up with no pencils to my name. So I panicked and pleaded with the lady next to me. She luckily had extra pencils and kindly shared them with me. We ended up striking a conversation, and after the exam, we became fast friends. I was able to pass with above average scores and received my certificate a few months later. I quickly sent it to my lawyer so she could add it to the stack, which is as I call it. This will make sense as I continue. The next exam was a real doozy. The CCSE, Conocimientos Constitucionales y Socioculturales de España. It's a mouthful, even for me, which translates to constitutional and socio-cultural aspects of Spain. Again, the scheduling difficulty applied to this particular exam as well. I remember speaking to the coordinator at the Cervantes Institute in Albuquerque, and he noted to him that the exam date that I was scheduled for was actually on Thanksgiving. He responded, not in Spain. With that, I registered as it was the only available date that would accommodate my schedule. So I spent Thanksgiving 2020 in Albuquerque and had dinner at the hotel bar. The exam was all-consuming. The information covered local, regional, federal government, healthcare, artists, writers, history, official languages, of which there are 4, Castilian, Catalan, Galician, and Basque, and unofficial languages, regional holidays, etc., etc., etc. I even had to learn who won a Nobel Prize for various categories in specific years. And they didn't even ask me that question on the exam. I was so annoyed. I studied like a maniac 6 to 8 weeks prior to the exam. My tendency is to crash course type of studying, and then I forget it all afterwards. But I got it all done. I even began dreaming in Spanish. All this for an exam of only 25 questions, which meant you couldn't afford many errors. I was well prepared and luckily passed it easily. One more certificate to add to the stack. Number 2, linked to Spain. My lawyer kindly provided a letter confirming that they were representing me. This was one of the easiest hurdles. Secondly, I had to enroll with the Instituto Cervantes online library. This was different than becoming a member of the Instituto Cervantes, which I needed to do in order to register for the DELE and CCSE exams noted above. Again, this was one of the easier hurdles. In addition, I obtained a letter of recommendation from Dr. Marc Roglan, director of the Meadows Museum at SMU, one of the preeminent Spanish museums in the country. May he rest in peace. Lastly, I bought a subscription to La Vanguardia, a Madrid newspaper, to show my interest in current affairs of Spain. Each week, I still get an email from that newspaper. Sometimes I read it, sometimes I don't, but I needed to do it at the time. Lastly, and the biggest one, I think, was number 3, Sephardic lineage, how to prove it. The FCJE, Federación de Comunidades Judías de España, which translates to Federation of Jewish Communities of Spain. This is the critical document without which one cannot move forward. It certifies that you have proven Sephardic lineage. The FCJE is the only organization who can issue this document. This is where my years of genealogical research paid off. I had most of the documents, but had a few gaps to fill. However, my research needed to be verified by an approved genealogist. Luckily, I happened to know one, Crispin Rendon, who I had met through Hogar de Dallas and at state conferences. I sent him all my information. He verified my documents and was also able to fill in a few of the gaps. Once my lineage had been verified by Crispin, it had to be reviewed and certified by an approved synagogue. So I had to join a synagogue. The good Catholic boy that I am. The one I chose from the approved list was Congregation Or V'Shalom in Atlanta. I contacted them and they were very familiar with the process and were very kind to expedite the certification. Yet another certificate for my lawyer to add to the stack. The next step was for my lawyer to send all the certified genealogical information to the FCJE for review and approval. On August 13th, 2021, I woke up to an email from my lawyer informing me that FCJE had accepted my genealogy and issued a certificate of verification. Yet another certificate to add to the stack. It was a big yay. That was a good day. Marta, my new lawyer, as Naomi had left the firm, verified the stack was in order and then proceeded to arrange for an appointment with a notario, also known as a notary. In Spain, however, notaries are degreed individuals, like a lawyer and other licensed professionals in the United States. The process took a couple of months for her to set up that meeting. So in this particular picture, the notario is on the left and Marta is on the right. On November 16th, 2021, I flew to Barcelona with the original documents, which I kept very close to me, COVID documents, and official government documents authorizing me to travel internationally. I arrived in Barcelona the following morning and checked into a lovely hotel across the cathedral, which also happened to be close to Marta's office. I wanted to make sure I was within walking distance and would not be late to my meeting. I met with her at 2:30 that afternoon to review documents and make sure all was in order. Once she was assured that all documents were there, we walked over to the notario, which was just a few blocks away. The notario was very official and rather stern. She reviewed my documents and with laser-focused skill, she asked me several questions, decided all was in order, and had me sign the required documents. I left with the assurance that I had done all I could do in my power to provide the documentation and meet the stringent requirements stated by the law. The next step was for the notario to send the stack of notarized documents to the State Department. I was told that the State Department review would take about 1 or 2 years and that there was no guarantee that the application would be approved. On October 17th, 2022, so this is several years after the initial meeting with my cousin, I woke to an email from Marta. She said, "I am so happy to be able to communicate to you that your Spanish citizenship application has been approved." So that was a great day. Great way to start the day. She gave me a list of 5 more documents I had to provide, and I had 1 year to finalize all documents and appear at the Spanish consulate in Houston. I would need to meet with an official and hand over those original documents and sign more documents. As fate would have it, life happened. And following up on this last process was put on the back burner. In May of this year, I decided to just get it done. Little did I suspect that the final document I needed, an apostilled FBI record, would take more than 4 months to be apostilled. Since an FBI record is a federal document, it had to be apostilled in DC. My original approach was to have the office of Representative Crockett, who is my representative district, to facilitate the process. I assumed that with their connections to DC, they could expedite the process. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. The document that they had was unacceptable. So I had to go through a professional apostille company. In the meantime, time was ticking away as October 17th was fast approaching. My lawyer was able to convince the Spanish consulate to meet with me and process my application pending the apostilled FBI record. So the evening of September 27th, I hopped on a plane to Houston, and the following morning at 9:30, I met with an official of the Spanish consulate, handed over the requested original documents, and signed a few more documents. As I had done with my trip to Barcelona, I stayed at a hotel within walking distance. I wanted to make sure that I did not miss my meeting and get there on time. The meeting went well, and I hopped on a plane back to Dallas that afternoon. On Thursday, October 5th, this week, to my surprise, the apostilled FBI record appeared on my doorstep. Yay. I quickly scanned it and emailed it to Marta. She added it to the stack. Now I wait yet again. My 11th great-grandfather, Marcos Alonso de la Garza y Arcon's family, was given the choice to convert to Catholicism or leave Spain. They chose the former. And because of that painful decision, I am here to share their story. The genealogical irony is that I too am descended from King Henry II of Castile and Leon through other ancestors. My distant cousins, Ferdinand and Isabella, set this journey into motion. I wonder whether they could have ever imagined that 531 years later, a descendant of those they had wronged would reclaim his rightful place in Spain in honor of his ancestors. I'm sure not. History's journey has many twists and turns, some dark, some hopeful. Recently, I visited Thanksgiving Square and came across this wonderful mosaic based on Norman Rockwell's painting, The Golden Rule. The image depicts, has everyone been to Thanksgiving Square? I assume so. It's really lovely. The image depicts humanity with all its variation, race, gender, ethnicity, and religion, all living together in harmony and mutual respect. The version of humanity may be idealized, but I think we can make it reality. We can learn from history. I never imagined I could return to Spain with an EU passport via my Sephardic roots. Because of a chance meeting, an unexpected extension, a skilled lawyer, my stubborn character, and genealogical research that I and many others had done, I was able to realize an unexpected gift. The universe works in mysterious ways. Who knew? Thank you. I think the stack is at the consulate in Houston, if I'm not mistaken. But I think a duplicate is with my lawyer in Barcelona. I make duplicates and triplicates of everything, just in case. I'm sure you guys do too, just in case. Yes.
Yeah, we had a question from Becky. Go ahead.
So now that you've done this, what are you going to do with this auction and this newfound citizenship?
You know, I'm not sure. When I started the process, I just thought it would be a nice option to have. You know, I'm 65. Who knows? I may want to retire. I don't know if I'll ever retire, but I have the option to travel to Spain and through all of the EU. So it's just, for me, it was originally a curiosity, and then it became a challenge, and now it's more an opportunity.
They need to do a meeting where everyone comes together who's gone through this process.
My guess, yes, I totally agree. My guess is their challenges are similar. My cousin Rebecca actually has had a lot of challenges, and she hasn't received her confirmation of lineage yet. So it takes a while. Yes.
I was wondering, with all the hoops that one has to go through for this, do you have any idea of how many people were successful like you?
I think it's in the 3,000 to 5,000. Originally, there were, I believe, 3.5 million people who could have done this. Unfortunately, it can be expensive, and not everyone has that option.
Yeah, so
this was very cool.
Yes.
In your research, did you discover anything about the Sephardic Jews who chose to remain Jewish and leave Spain, as my ancestors left and went to Germany?
Interesting. No, in my research, I found that several of them went east. Several went to Portugal. Also, the concept of crypto Jews was an interesting concept because the Catholics believe that if you're baptized, that's it. But the Jews believe if you were forced to convert under duress, then you never really converted. So it's an interesting mix. I think the people who came to the New World had to show limpieza de sangre, which is clean blood, which is a horrible term, but that's what it was. So they had to prove that they were conversos for several generations back before they were allowed to come over. I'm sure other people paid off the ship masters and got on the boat and got here. and then just lived a crypto life.
Hey, so I was wondering if you had any recommendations for people that are kind of been working on this, that are kind of in a hit a brick wall, which my family's also from Monterrey, Coahuila, and other places.
I'm sure we're related somewhere along the way.
And I have some there's some last name indications and some other tradition things, but I've been kind of stuck in the 1700s, handwriting wise has been like my big barrier. Is that something probably just kind of, you probably just have to pay professional to get
Well,
help,
no,
or-
you don't. If you join Hogar de Dallas,
Okay.
we would be more than happy to help you. We have two wonderful women who are very familiar with reading 18th and 17th and 16th century writing.
That's
so they could
awesome.
help you.
Okay, yeah, I know I'm probably late to join, but yeah, Benavides, Solis, a couple of the.
We are related.
Okay, that's awesome. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. The Benavides, it's Baez de Benavides, and it harkens from the Canary Islands, if I'm not mistaken, and from the royal indigenous families.
Well, I'm sure I'll see you around then.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm here to help. Any other questions?
I don't really have a question, but you must have spent a pile of money too.
It was expensive. Luckily, I had done a lot of the genealogy, so I didn't have to pay a genealogist. It was just had to be verified by Crispin.
Your plane tickets.
Well,
all
plane
your-
tickets, yeah. I mean, I've heard, up to 20,000. Mine was more in the 5 to 7 range, I think. I just took the receipts and stuck them in an envelope, but I haven't totaled them up. And also I haven't gotten my passport. So it's not a done deal. Now I'm waiting for 3, 4, 5, 6 months for everything to be processed. Then I'll have to go back to Houston. They would not even let me into, they have these little booths with bulletproof glass, and that's where all the documents went through. They won't let me into the back area, which is where the induction ceremony happens. And I have to pledge my allegiance to the King of Spain. So I will do that with my fingers crossed behind me. But the Spanish do allow for dual citizenship, as does America. So it's not a problem. But yeah, they're pretty strict about it. And my guess is, another ironic thing is my father was a federal immigration lawyer. So who knew, But he always talked about the process and how difficult it was to become an American citizen. So he tried to help them kind of go through those hoops. Yes, ma'am.
It's my understanding that there is at least a Jewish community in Mexico.
Yes.
Do you know about the extent of how many people that came to Mexico and remained Jewish openly?
Well, they couldn't openly.
Okay.
Because the Inquisition would have burned them, which they did very early in the mid 1500s.
In Mexico?
In Mexico, there's a big family, the Carvajal family, where they were taken to the main square in Mexico City and put on a pyre, and most of the family was killed, burnt alive. So that was a big deterrent for people to say, okay, I may stay Jewish, but I'm not going to tell anyone.
And the other thing, years ago, I read, and I'm not clear on this, but that the Seventh-day Adventists was actually kind of a way to hide in plain sight, because they have a lot of Jewish rituals. I don't know if
Maybe.
that's true.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I remember when I spent 20 years in New York, and many of my friends were Jewish, and I'm like, why do we get along so well? So, but part of that is the Mexican culture is very similar, very strong mothers, and guilt crosses both. Catholic, Mexican, Jewish, a lot of guilt going on there. So it just resonated with me. But I'm not sure about those. They could not show. Actually, there's one story of a friend of mine here in Dallas who, when he was a child, he saw a menorah in a window and thought it was really beautiful. So for Christmas, he bought it for his mother. And when she opened it, she burst out in tears, and he didn't understand why. And she said, "We're Jewish," and he didn't know it. And, knowing this type of stuff, I'm doing a talk on Wednesday at UT Southwestern about cultural well-being. And I think well-being really starts with yourself and trying to learn as much as you can about yourself, and then learn about others and see how all that can just work in harmony. So I'll have 3 different examples on Wednesday of cultural well-being. Yes, ma'am.
When I look at early immigrants to the U.S., like in the 1900s, and they have to sign that they will not follow the king of Prussia or whatever, if
Interesting.
they want to be a U.S. citizen. I mean, that was in the U.S. citizenship records.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the political standing of the U.S. about individuals who want dual citizenship? I know that my niece married a guy from Ireland, and so he has dual citizenship.
I think the U.S. Recognizes it. Yeah. The tricky part was Spain recognizing it. And with the 2015 law, that was part of the law that you didn't have to live in Spain. You could have dual citizenship and live in the United States or anywhere else.
So today, if someone came from someplace in the EU to the U.S. and wanted to be a U.S. citizen, they don't have to renounce their allegiance to.
I don't believe so. I mean, I'm not an immigration lawyer. My dad's not around anymore, but I don't believe so. It would be interesting about renouncing allegiance to the king, because Spain, I think, is the only EU country that still has a king. So if a native-born Spaniard comes to the States, I would be curious to see whether he has to renounce his allegiance to the king, or whether that's been figured out already. I'm not sure.
Well, I know people that have 2 passports.
Sure.
You can tell the difference. One's, I think ours is blue and others are red.
Mm-hmm. I just thought it would be interesting. And, once again, I haven't gotten it yet. I've done everything I can possible. But once I have it, it'll be easier to travel in Europe.
Yeah, I think you can travel more places in Europe without visas with your Spanish passport than with.
Right. But even, the US passport, I still think, is the prime document. I was in Europe this past April, and US passports are recognized anywhere. It's kind of like the dollar. It's, it's very powerful.
2 questions.
Yes.
Do you have any siblings and/or first cousins that are interested in going through the same process and desire that you had? That's one question. The second one, what precipitated the Spanish government to allow this to happen, to open this up? What
was the
started this?
impetus?
Yes.
Yes. First, my brother heard about it, but he's not as tenacious as I am. So, and you had to get the application in by a certain date, and then the rest could follow, which is what happened in my case. And I just don't think he was interested, but not interested enough to do the work. First answer. I'm not quite sure. I think there must have been something going on in Spain. I know the various regions, like the Catalans and the Basques, are constantly looking for independence. That might have something to do with it. I think guilt works. I think I think maybe they felt, it's been over 500 years. It's time to allow for this. There must have been some people in Congress who brought it up, and then they said, okay, let's do it. In my mind, I also thought it's an economic boost. If you could get more people to come in, and if they can afford to do this, then obviously they have funds, and maybe they might move back. And, there could have been an economic element to it. That's kind of what I thought might be, that they needed a boost. Any other questions? Anything online?
No, but I do have a question for you.
Sure.
The
Where are you?
person, my name is Paul Feather. I'm your Q&A manager running all the questions online here.
Okay.
I have a question about this gentleman's name that you mentioned. Was it Crispin Rendon?
Yes, Crispin Rendon.
I love that guy. So I gave him my grandparents and on both sides, and he ran them back to the king of the Canary Islands.
Yep.
So,
then we're related.
Wow, that's great. Yeah,
because mine does too. He did that for me.
Oh, it's just blew my mind, and actually, so many levels back. I don't know. The report's 95 pages long. It's crazy.
Yep, it's amazing. He's a real wealth of knowledge, and he's been doing it for so many years, and he has a huge database. So that's something that Olgar is is in discussions with him to see if we could be the safeguard for that database, because he's up in years, and who knows, just like we all know, if you don't guard the information, it can disappear.
Correct.
So we want to be able to hold that. And
now I'm sorry I didn't get to meet you in person, but one of my cousins is a green-eyed Mexican, and I'm just wondering, do you have green eyes and curly hair?
I have hazel eyes, and my brother has blue eyes.
Interesting. So I'm brown eyes and brown hair. So it just kind of, that whole lineage goes back all through Mexico. And if somebody said that most of the people that are Mexicans now are all related to 3 females in Mexico.
Yes, Beatriz Quintanilla is one of them, who was the mother of Juana de Treviño, which is the wife of Marcos Alonso de la Garza. And I think,
thank you very much.
Sure. We have to meet, Primo.
Sure. Timo, my cousin, or how do you say cousin?
Cousin?
Yeah.
Primo? Primo
okay.
or prima. So we're primos.
Primos, okay.
Yeah, we'll have to meet and see where our lineages cross over, but definitely the Canary Islands, the same as this woman in the back. We might all be Baez de Benavides.
Yeah, because she's one of my Baez Trevino.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Catalina and General Francisco, 1655 to 1726.
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's like I said, the people who came over, there weren't a lot of people. There just weren't. And there were a few hundreds, and even up to the 1600s, it wasn't like huge waves of people coming over. It's similar. I've done the ancestry for my dear friend Scott, and his father like flippantly said, "Oh, I think we came over on the Mayflower." So of course, he threw me a bone that I gnawed on. And I went at it, and I proved that 4 of his ancestors came over on the Mayflower. So we started with that. And then I thought, oh, well, all these people, once again, back then, there weren't a lot of people on the East Coast, so they all kind of intermarried. So, I did research, and, both sides of his family are SAR, so he got into that. And then I just recently did it for the crown of Charlemagne. So I had to go back 40 generations, and I got all that information once again, because there were only certain families that all intermarried. So they start intersecting. So we'll have to compare our charts. We may have more than the Baez de Benavides ancestor.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. It was cooking till about a half an hour before I showed up. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This has been a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. If you're already a member, thank you. Your fees have been supporting these and other society activities. If you're not yet a member, please consider joining now. Go to dallasgenealogy.org and click on the membership tab.